I need some idea of the threat we face.
As I understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
Nuclear holocaust.
No. Something worse.
The moment I saw this in the trailer, I became worried about Christopher Nolan's Tenet. The problem isn't that preventing World War III isn't a compelling motive for characters. It's that we've all seen it before. It's the end of the world, it's World War III, it's a nuclear bomb, the aliens are winning, and on it goes. The reason we consistently have such high stakes is because we think they're more compelling. What's more frightening than a villain in an Iron Man suit? A villain controlling a whole fleet of Iron Man suits. What's more frightening than a Winter Soldier? A whole team of Winter Soldiers. Once filmmakers accept this doctrine, they run into the problem of escalation. In order to make a better sequel or outperform their competitors, writers feel they have to raise the stakes further. The result is a film industry with perpetually increasing stakes. There's only one problem with the strategy: it ignores the human scale. The human mind is amazing, but it has a very difficult time practically imagining big numbers. Big might be an overstatement. For the average person, it is difficult to immediately recognize any number larger than 5 without the assistance of a pattern. We're very good at thinking abstractly, but it's incredibly difficult to hold the abstract and the concrete in our minds at the same time. The problem with world-threatening stakes is that people can't think that big. As Interstellar brilliantly demonstrates, we can abstractly understand that the world could end, but that somehow feels less weighty than hearing that our children could die.
You never would have come here unless you believed you were going to save them. Evolution has yet to transcend that simple barrier. We can care deeply, selflessly, about those we know, but that empathy rarely extends beyond our line of sight.
On paper, big numbers and big stakes are more compelling, but in actuality, small and personal stakes are what make for good stories. Consider these two scenes from the first Avengers movie.
You could smell crazy on him.
Have care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard, and he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
The fact that Loki killed 80 people is shown in a negative light, but it's also laughed off. The audience isn't given any time to process 80 deaths, and we know nothing about any of those 80 people. It's a tragedy, but it's abstract and therefore uncompelling. I mean, the audience knows Loki should be stopped, but nobody really hates him. Contrast this with the death of Agent Coulson, a known character. This is a pivotal point for the entire MCU. The Avengers band together to avenge not the 80 abstract deaths, but Coulson.
He's wearing Phil Coulson's jacket. Guess he never did get you to sign them.
The audience has no problem with this because, like the Avengers, they didn't know those 80 people while they do know Coulson. One beloved character fits on the human scale. 80 people don't. Yet, a great many producers, including Marvel, seem to have lost sight of this. I mean, Marvel keeps making bigger and bigger stakes until the entire universe was at stake. But they wanted to keep making movies, so now they've added the stakes of other universes as well.
It leaves a hole in the fabric of reality. And that hole, you think, oh, should we leave it alone? Should we back off? Should we play it safe? Nah, you think, let's make it bigger!
Bigger problems don't make for better stories. Instead, they make us feel detached from the problems. I'm not the first to recognize that this is a problem. Ryan George was pointing this out years ago.
Yes, sir, I do. And this one starts off with the Avengers doing some super awesome murders. Oh, it does? Yeah, it's gonna be like 10 solid minutes of the Avengers murdering and cracking jokes and murdering and cracking jokes. That is so cool.
But the issue isn't just that our heroes are morally questionable, it's that audiences are fine with that. Take the John Wick franchise. Anyone who's seen even one of these movies knows that John Wick kills a lot of people, which makes sense because he's literally a cartoon assassin. Yet, despite the shocking number of people he's killed, they can keep making John Wick movies because John feels more human than any of his victims. That is, because John is really the only character made on the human scale, he's the only one the audience feels invested in. Now, I'm not trying to take the Wicked movies to task. They're made for entertainment, not for making a philosophical argument, and I recognize that. Yet I think it's worth noting that movies that aren't built around a human scale risk more than just having an uncompelling storyline. They risk taking a tacit but dangerous stance on the value of human life. Rather than helping the audience wrestle with what it means to be human, these high-stake movies inoculate us against humanity. However, the human scale doesn't just apply to the number of people with whom we can connect. It also applies to geography. Good stories have to take place somewhere. 21st century America often embraces a transient lifestyle. I mean, I live outside a major city and I constantly see people coming and going. We come and go for college, for work, for retirement, and so on. I'm not saying that moving is wrong, but we have lost the old sense that place matters. That we feel at home when we know the layout of our surroundings. This is something that sitcoms can do really well. If you watch even just a season of The Office, or Parks and Rec, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you'll get a feel for the layout of the workspace. You know where things are, and that brings with it a sense of comfort. Friends is one of the most watched TV shows ever, even though it's poorly written and frankly has unlikable characters. People like Friends because it feels real to them. And I think one of the contributing factors to that real feel is that most of the screen time is in one of the two apartments or the coffee shop. Viewers spend enough time looking at these three sets that they begin to feel at home in them. I'm not saying that the audience needs to feel at home in every film, but I am suggesting that having familiar places and familiar layouts will help ground a story. To do this, places have to feel real, which means minimal green screens and LED walls. Instead, scenes should be filmed in real places and shown with enough frequency that viewers grow accustomed to that place and how each place connects to another. Denis Villeneuve's Dune is a good example of how we need not just real settings, but familiar ones. Dune does a phenomenal job of making the desert feel real because it was shot in a desert. Yet nothing about it feels familiar. As I watched both movies, I never had the sense of knowing where I was. I had absolutely no map in my head and no idea of how far away anything was from anything else. Villeneuve is not completely to blame here. I've read Frank Herbert's Dune and it had the same problem, though to a lesser extent. Still, while I can see myself in any of the scenes in Dune, I can't picture myself living in that world because I don't know where anything is. And even when I'm trying to be invested in the story, I can't help but feel disconnected because I'm geographically lost. Contrast this with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Not only did Jackson heavily rely on real landscapes and practical effects, but even those who only watch the movies are given some sense of the geography. Now, I'm not saying every large-scale movie needs to zoom in on a map, though I personally wouldn't mind that, but Jackson communicates this distance in other ways. We have references to distance.
Aemir is loyal to you. His men will return and fight for their king.
They will be 300 leagues from here by now.
We see how many beacons need to be lit for Rohan to get Gondor's message, and we see people journeying from place to place. Traveling scenes are not always interesting in books or in movies, but they do establish a physical connection between where the characters were and where they're going. We can see ourselves in Middle-earth because it looks and feels like a real place. In future videos, I intend to explore how localized stories have much to offer. I mean, right now, it may feel like good movies need to be big movies, with lots of actors, lots of sets, and huge stakes. But if you're trying to write a compelling movie, keep this principle in mind. No matter how big the scope of the story is, it will have personal impact on the viewers only insofar as it fits the human scale.